You are listening to HOA Busted. I wish this was exaggerated. I am escalating this today, do you understand, Heather said, and she was already pointing at my windshield before I could get my door open. The tow company warning tag was orange and fluttering under my wiper blade, and the timing was too perfect. She had her phone out like she was about to call dispatch, right there in the Sequoia Terrace Association visitor lot. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I work as a financial analyst, and I track every HOA fee that comes through my account because that is how I keep my disabled brother safe in our shared townhome. We cannot afford a towing crisis or a surprise lien. Heather Young is the Design Review Board Vice Chair, and she has been blocking approvals out of spite for 3 years. Today she decided my car was parked illegally even though I was in a marked guest spot and the rules say nothing about daytime limits. If you make me repeat myself, it gets more expensive, she said, and she tapped her tiny body camera like it was a badge. I did not move. I stayed calm. I had my phone recording in my jacket pocket, and I clipped my flashlight to my belt loop so my hands were free. The rideshare driver 2 spots over was waiting for a pickup, and he rolled his eyes when Heather raised her voice again. You are in violation of the parking addendum, she said. This is your final courtesy notice before I authorize the tow. There is no parking addendum, I said. I checked the recorded documents last week. Heather's face went red. She pulled a laminated sheet from her cardigan pocket and waved it like a warrant. Then you did not check the updated portal, she said. This went into effect 30 days ago, and you signed the acknowledgement. I never signed anything, I said. She smiled. Then I guess we will let the tow company sort it out. The rideshare driver muttered something under his breath. Heather shot him a look, but he was already scrolling his phone and ignoring her. I felt my anger rising, but I swallowed it. I knew the moment to use it was coming. I took a photo of the laminated sheet. Heather tried to pull it back, but I was faster. The document had no date, no board signature, and the policy number did not match the Sequoia Terrace numbering system. I recognized the font. It was the same template she used 3 years ago when she tried to find my neighbor for a mailbox color that was never against the rules. That was the cold case. My neighbor paid the fine because he did not want the hassle, but the violation notice had a creation date 2 weeks after the alleged inspection. I found it in the trash near the mailbox cluster, and I kept a photo on my old phone. At the time, I did not have proof it was Heather. Now I was starting to connect the clues. I need to see the board resolution that authorized this addendum, I said. Heather's smile got tighter. You can submit a records request, she said. Standard processing is 30 business days. I already submitted one, I said, 2 weeks ago. You denied it. She tilted her head. I denied it because your tone was inappropriate, she said. If you want records, you need to be respectful. The rideshare driver's passenger arrived, and they both stared at us for a second before getting in the car. Heather waited until they drove off, then she stepped closer and lowered her voice. I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry, she said. That is how this works. You think you are the first person to try this. I did not respond. My phone was still recording. I let her keep talking. 3 years ago you had a case like this, I said. A mailbox violation that never made sense. I want to see those records too. Heather froze for half a heartbeat. Then she laughed. That case is closed, she said. It was resolved per the covenants. The neighbor paid a $300 fine for a mailbox that was compliant, I said, and the inspection report was backdated. Prove it, she said. I will, I said. She turned and walked toward the management office, pulling her phone out. I heard her say something about collections and a formal hearing. I got in my car and backed up my phone video to the cloud before my storage filled up completely. I had less than 2 gigabytes left, and I needed that evidence secure before anything happened to the device. When I got home, my brother was in the living room watching a cooking show. He has mobility issues and needs our townhome to stay stable. Any disruption, towing, restricted access, or a lien would put him at risk. I did not tell him about Heather yet. I went into my office and pulled up the HOA portal. The parking addendum Heather mentioned was not there. I checked the rules archive, the board minutes, and the member notifications. Nothing. I downloaded the entire covenant packet and searched for any reference to daytime guest parking limits. The only rule was overnight parking, which required a 72-hour permit. Daytime was unrestricted. I opened my banking app and pulled the HOA payment history. Every monthly fee was accounted for. Then I looked at the association budget packet from the annual meeting. There was a line item for towing services, but the vendor listed was not the company that left the tag on my windshield today. The budget showed payments to a company called Metro Tow and Secure. The tag today was from Rapid Response Towing. I pulled up the Minnesota Secretary of State Business Registry and searched Rapid Response Towing. The company was registered 8 months ago. The listed agent was a name I did not recognize, but the address was a P.O. box in the same zip code as Heather's home address, which was public record in the neighborhood directory. I sat back. This was not random. Heather was using a preferred vendor to create fake urgency and invented re-inspection fees. The tow company was probably getting a cut, or she had some stake in it. Either way, the HOA was not authorizing these tows through proper channels. I needed more proof. I called my neighbor Luis, the one who lives next door and has been tired of Heather for years. He is calm, keeps good records, and agreed to be a witness when I explained what was happening. She tried the same thing to me last month, Luis said. She said my fence stain was unapproved even though I used the exact color from the approved list. She demanded I restain it or pay a $500 fine. Did you pay it? I asked. No, Luis said. I told her to show me the violation in writing. She never sent it. Then 2 weeks later she said the issue was resolved and I should consider it a warning. That is the pattern, I said. She stages violations, pressures people to pay, and if they push back, she drops it to avoid a paper trail. Luis agreed to pull his old emails and any notices he received. I told him I was reopening the mailbox case from 3 years ago and asked if he remembered anything. I remember the guy, Luis said. He moved out 6 months after that fine. He told me Heather made his life miserable. She kept finding new violations every week until he gave up and sold. I thanked him and hung up. Then I went back to my old phone, the one I replaced last year. I powered it on and waited for it to boot. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. I scrolled through the photos until I found the one I took of the violation notice in the trash 3 years ago. The notice was dated March 14th, 3 years ago. It listed a mailbox color violation and cited a compliance inspection. The inspector's signature was illegible, but the notice template had a metadata stamp in the corner, created March 28th. That was 2 weeks after the alleged inspection. I took a photo of the old phone screen with my current phone, then I plugged the old device into my laptop and extracted the original image file. The file properties confirmed the creation date mismatch. This was proof of backdating. Now I needed to connect it to Heather. I opened the HOA member portal again and navigated to the board minutes archive. I searched for any meeting in March 3 years ago where the mailbox violation was discussed. Nothing. I tried February and April. Still nothing. Then I tried the design review board minutes, which were stored in a separate folder. I found a meeting summary from March 10th, 3 years ago. Heather was listed as vice chair. The minutes mentioned a batch of compliance inspections scheduled for the following week, but no specific properties were named. I kept digging. I found a spreadsheet in the shared files folder labeled Compliance Tracking. It was password protected, but the file properties showed it was last modified by a user account with Heather's initials. I could not open it, but I saved a copy of the file properties as a screenshot. The next morning, I submitted a formal records request through the HOA portal. I asked for all board minutes, design review minutes, compliance inspection logs, and vendor contracts from the past 4 years. I copied the management company and the board president. I kept my tone professional and cited the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act, which requires associations to produce records within 10 business days. 2 hours later, I got a response. It was from Heather. "Your request is denied due to improper format," the email said. "Records requests must be submitted on the official form, available at the management office during business hours. Additionally, your request is overly broad and burdensome. Please narrow your scope to specific documents." I replied immediately. I asked which official form she meant, because the statute does not require a specific form. I also asked her to clarify what made my request burdensome, since I listed specific document types and a clear date range. She responded within minutes. "If you make me repeat myself, it gets more expensive," the email said. "Submit the form or your request will be considered abandoned." I printed her email. Then I called the management company directly. I got a receptionist who transferred me to the property manager, a man named Greg. He sounded tired. "I received your records request," Greg said. "Heather forwarded it to me this morning. I am working on pulling the documents, but it will take the full 10 days. "That is fine," I said. "But Heather sent me a denial email. Is she authorized to deny records requests on behalf of the board?" There was a pause. "No," Greg said. "Only the board president or I can deny a request, and only if it is legally privileged or overly broad. I will look into it." "I also need clarification on the parking addendum Heather cited yesterday," I said. "I do not see it in the portal, and it is not in the recorded covenants." "Let me check," Greg said. I heard him typing. "I do not see any parking addendum," he said. "The last amendment was 18 months ago, and it was about fence height." "So the addendum Heather showed me does not exist," I said. "Not in our records," Greg said. "If she has a document, it was not approved by the board." "I need that in writing," I said. Greg hesitated. "I can confirm that in an email," he said. "Give me an hour." I thanked him and hung up. When I turned around, Heather was standing in the lobby near the door. Her face was pale, and her tiny body camera was recording. She must have been listening. "You are harassing staff," she said. "I am requesting records," I said. "That is my legal right." "You are trying to create a disruption," she said. "The board will hear about this." "Good," I said. "I want the board to hear about it." She walked out. I stayed in the lobby and waited for Greg's email. It arrived 20 minutes later. The email confirmed that no parking addendum had been approved and that Heather was not authorized to deny records requests. Greg copied the board president, a man named Tom, who I had never met. Tom replied an hour later. He asked me to attend an emergency design review meeting the following evening to discuss the parking issue and my records request. The meeting was at the clubhouse at 7. I forwarded the email chain to Luis and asked if he could come as a witness. He said yes. That night I went through my file cabinet and pulled every HOA document I had saved over the past 3 years. I organized them in a binder with tabs, covenants, budgets, board minutes, payment receipts, violation notices, and correspondence. I printed Heather's denial email, Greg's confirmation, and the old mailbox violation notice with the metadata mismatch. I added the screenshot of the compliance tracking file properties and the business registry page for rapid response towing. The binder was 2 inches thick. I labeled it evidence and put it in my work bag. The next evening I arrived at the clubhouse 10 minutes early. Luis was already there, sitting near the back with a notepad. Heather was at the front table with 2 other board members I did not recognize. Tom, the board president, was sitting in the middle. He looked uncomfortable. Heather saw me walk in with the binder, and her expression changed. She leaned over and whispered something to the person next to her. Then she pulled a stack of papers from her bag. I recognized them immediately. They were pre-filled violation forms with boxes already checked. The same template I had seen 3 years ago. Tom called the meeting to order. He said we were here to discuss a parking complaint and a records dispute. He asked Heather to present first. Heather stood. She said I had been parking illegally in guest spaces during restricted hours and that I had refused to comply with multiple notices. She held up the laminated sheet from 2 days ago and said it was an approved parking addendum. Tom frowned. I do not remember approving that, he said. It was approved in a design review subcommittee meeting, Heather said. We do not have subcommittees, Tom said. Heather's face went red. Then it was an email vote, she said. Tom looked at the other board members. They shook their heads. I would like to see the email, Tom said. Heather did not respond. She sat down. Tom turned to me. Do you have a response? He asked. I opened the binder and flipped to the tab labeled parking. I pulled out Greg's email and handed it to Tom. The management company confirmed there is no approved parking addendum, I said. Heather showed me a document that does not exist in the association records. Tom read the email. He looked at Heather. Is this true? He asked. There was a misunderstanding, Heather said. The addendum is in draft form. I thought it had been finalized. Then why did you threaten to tow my car? I asked. I was acting in the best interest of the community, Heather said. By threatening a homeowner with a rule that does not exist, I said. Tom held up his hand. Let us move on to the records request, he said. I flipped to the next tab. I pulled out Heather's denial email and handed it to Tom. Heather denied my records request and told me I needed to use a form that does not exist, I said. The management company confirmed she is not authorized to deny requests. Tom read the email. He looked at Heather again. You cannot deny records requests, he said. That is not your authority. I was trying to manage the workload, Heather said. By violating state law, I asked. Luis raised his hand from the back. Tom nodded at him. I want to add something, Luis said. Heather tried to fine me last month for a fence stain that was on the approved list. When I asked for the violation in writing, she never sent it. Then she said it was resolved. Tom looked at Heather. Is that true? He asked. It was a miscommunication, Heather said. That is the pattern, I said. Heather stages violations, threatens fines, and if people push back, she drops it to avoid documentation. Tom leaned back. This is serious, he said. Do you have proof of a pattern? I flipped to the next tab. I pulled out the mailbox violation notice from 3 years ago and handed it to Tom. This is a violation notice Heather issued 3 years ago, I said. The notice is dated March 14th, but the file metadata shows it was created March 28th. That is 2 weeks after the alleged inspection. Tom stared at the printout. Heather stood up. That is a private document, she said. You do not have permission to present that. I found it in the trash, I said, and it is evidence of fraud. Heather's face went white. Tom held up his hand. We need to take a recess, he said. Tom asked Heather to step outside with him. They were gone for 15 minutes. When they came back, Heather would not look at me. Tom sat down and folded his hands. The board is going to launch an internal review of all compliance actions taken by the Design Review Board over the past 4 years, Tom said. In the meantime, Heather is suspended from her vice chair role pending the outcome of the review. Heather stood. This is retaliation, she said. No, Tom said. This is accountability. Sit down. She sat. Tom turned to me. "Your records request is approved," he said. "Greg will have the documents ready within 10 days. If there are any issues, let me know directly." I nodded. Then I stood. "I also want to request a forensic audit of the association budget and vendor contracts," I said. "Specifically, I want to see all payments to towing companies and compliance contractors over the past 4 years." If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA revenge content where receipts win every time. Tom looked at the other board members. They nodded. "Approved," Tom said. "We will hire an independent auditor." Heather stood again. "This is a waste of money," she said. "Sit down," Tom said. She sat. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. I walked out with Luis, and he clapped me on the shoulder. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "It is not over," I said. "She is going to escalate." I was right. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from a collections agency. The letter said I owed the association $600 in unpaid fines for parking violations and failure to comply with design review standards. The letter threatened legal action if I did not pay within 15 days. I opened the envelope. The corners were dirt-smudged, like it had been sitting in a truck for days. The letter was dated a week ago, but the postmark was from yesterday. The violations listed were vague, unauthorized parking, non-compliance with community standards, and failure to respond to notices. None of it was real. I had never received any violation notices except the fake parking addendum. I had no open design review issues. The fines were invented. I called Greg at the management company. He said he had no record of any fines against my account. He asked me to forward the collections letter. I did. He called me back an hour later. "This is not from the association," Greg said. "We did not authorize collections. This is a third-party company acting without our approval." "Who authorized it?" I asked. "I am looking into it," Greg said. That afternoon, I got another email from Heather. It was marked high priority. "Your repeated harassment of board members and staff has created a hostile environment," the email said. "The board is considering a restraining order to protect community volunteers. You will be notified of a formal hearing to address your conduct." I forwarded the email to Tom. He responded immediately. "Heather does not speak for the board," he wrote. "Ignore that email. I am scheduling an emergency board meeting to address her conduct." The emergency meeting was scheduled for 3 days later. In the meantime, I kept digging. I pulled the association tax filings from the state website and cross-referenced the vendor payments in the budget. There were 3 payments to rapid response towing over the past 8 months, totaling $4,200. The payments were coded as emergency services, but there was no documentation of any emergency tows in the board minutes. I also found a payment to a compliance consulting company called Clearview Standards Group. The company was listed in the budget as a contractor for violation tracking and reinspection services. I searched the Minnesota Business Registry. Clearview Standards Group was registered 6 months ago. The listed agent was Heather Young. Heather was paying herself through a shell company. The association was funding her fake compliance operation, and she was pocketing the money. This was fraud. I printed the tax filings, the business registry pages, and the budget line items. I added them to the binder under a new tab labeled Fraud. Then I called a lawyer. The lawyer was a guy named Mike who specialized in HOA disputes. I met him at his office the next morning and walked him through everything: the fake parking addendum, the backdated violation, the collections letter, the shell company, and the towing payments. "This is textbook embezzlement," Mike said. "You need to report this to the board immediately and to law enforcement if they do not act." "What happens if the board does not act?" I asked. "Then you file a complaint with the Minnesota Attorney General and consider a civil suit," Mike said. "But if the board acts, they will probably settle to avoid publicity." I asked Mike to draft a demand letter. He said he would have it ready by the end of the day. The letter would demand that the board terminate Heather immediately, void all fines issued under her authority, refund any payments made under false pretenses, and hire an independent auditor to review all financials. The letter was delivered to the board the following morning. Tom called me an hour later. "We are holding a special meeting tonight," Tom said. "Heather will be asked to resign. If she refuses, we will vote to remove her." "I want to be there," I said. "You should be," Tom said. The meeting was at the clubhouse again. This time, there were more people. Word had spread. I counted at least 15 homeowners in the room. Luis was in the front row. Heather was sitting at the side table, and she looked furious. Her tiny body camera was on. Tom opened the meeting and explained that the board had received evidence of financial misconduct and procedural violations. He said Heather would be given an opportunity to respond, and then the board would vote on her removal. Heather stood. "This is a witch hunt," she said. "I have served this community for 6 years, and this is how you repay me. You have been running a shell company and billing the association for fake services," Tom said. "That is fraud." Heather's face went red. "Prove it," she said. I stood and walked to the front. I opened the binder and pulled out the business registry page, the budget line items, and the tax filings. I handed them to Tom. "Clearview Standards Group is registered to Heather," I said. "The association has paid that company $12,000 over the past year. There is no record of any services provided." Tom read the documents. He looked at Heather. "Is this true?" he asked. "I was providing consulting services," Heather said. "What services?" Tom asked. "Compliance tracking, design review coordination, vendor management," Heather said. "You are the vice chair," Tom said. "That is volunteer work. You do not get paid for it." "I was subcontracted," Heather said. "By who?" Tom asked. Heather did not answer. Tom turned to the other board members. "I am calling for a vote to remove Heather from the Design Review Board and all association committees, effective immediately," he said. The vote was unanimous. Heather stood and grabbed her bag. "You will regret this," she said. "I will sue every one of you." "Good luck," Tom said. Heather walked out. The room was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. The rest of the homeowners joined in. I sat down. Tom adjourned the meeting and said the board would release a statement within 48 hours. He also said the association would hire a forensic auditor and report the findings to law enforcement if necessary. The next day, I got an email from Greg. He said the auditor had been hired and would start the following week. He also said Heather had submitted a resignation letter that morning, effective immediately. The letter included a clause where she agreed to repay all funds received through Clearview Standards Group in exchange for the association not pursuing criminal charges. I forwarded the email to Luis. He called me a minute later. "You did it," he said. "We did it," I said. But I was not done. I still wanted to know what happened 3 years ago with the mailbox violation. I called the homeowner who had paid the fine, the one who moved out. His name was David. I found his number through a mutual neighbor. David answered on the second ring. I explained who I was and why I was calling. "Heather made my life a nightmare," David said. "She found a new violation every week. Mailbox, fence, landscaping, even my doormat. I paid the fines because I did not know I could fight them." "Did you keep any of the notices?" I asked. "No," David said. "I threw them out when I moved, but I remember the mailbox one. She said the color was wrong, but I had used the exact shade from the HOA list. I showed her the receipt, and she said the list was outdated." Did she ever show you an updated list? I asked. No, David said. She just kept threatening more fines until I paid. I thanked David and hung up. Then I went back to the binder and pulled the mailbox violation notice. I compared it to the pre-filled forms Heather had at the meeting. The layout was identical. The font was the same. The signature line was blank on both. Heather had been using a template to fabricate violations for at least 3 years. She would fill in the property address, the violation type, and the fine amount, then backdate the creation stamp to make it look official. She probably printed them in batches and kept them ready to deploy whenever she wanted to pressure someone. I took the template comparison to Mike, the lawyer. He said it was strong evidence of a pattern. He also said the association could void every violation Heather had issued if the board agreed. Tom called a follow-up board meeting 2 weeks later. The auditor had finished the preliminary report. Tom read the findings out loud. The association paid Clearview Standards Group $12,800 over 14 months, Tom said. No invoices, no service agreements, no documentation of work performed. The auditor also found 3 payments to Rapid Response Towing for services that were never authorized by the board. Total exposure is over $17,000. The room was silent. Heather has agreed to repay the full amount in installments over the next 12 months, Tom said. If she defaults, the association will pursue criminal charges. Someone asked if Heather would face any other consequences. Tom said the association was referring the case to the Ramsey County attorney for review, but he could not comment further. Tom also announced that the board had voted to void all compliance violations issued by Heather over the past 4 years. Any homeowner who paid a fine could request a refund. Luis raised his hand. What about future compliance? He asked. We are hiring a licensed property management company to handle all inspections and enforcement, Tom said. No board member will have unilateral authority to issue violations. The meeting ended with applause again. I stayed after to talk to Tom. I thanked him for acting quickly. You did the work, Tom said. I just followed through. A week later, I got a check in the mail from the association. It was a refund for David, the former homeowner who paid the mailbox fine 3 years ago. Tom had tracked him down and sent the refund without being asked. I called David and told him. He was quiet for a moment. Thank you, he said. I did not think anyone cared. People care, I said. It just takes someone to push back. The forensic audit was completed a month later. The auditor found that Heather had issued over 40 fake violations over 4 years, collecting more than $32,000 in fines and vendor kickbacks. The report also found that the board had failed to review compliance actions and had allowed Heather to operate without oversight. The auditor recommended a complete overhaul of the association governance structure, including term limits for board members, mandatory annual audits, and a requirement that all enforcement actions be approved by a majority vote of the board. Tom resigned 2 weeks later. He said he felt responsible for not catching the fraud earlier. A special election was held, and a new board was elected. Luis ran for president and won. The new board implemented all of the auditor's recommendations. They also passed a resolution formally apologizing to every homeowner who had been targeted by Heather and offering full refunds. I got my refund check a month later. It was for $600, the amount Heather tried to collect through the fake collections letter. I deposited it and used the money to take my brother out to dinner. 3 months later, I got a call from a detective with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office. He said Heather had been charged with theft by swindle and fraudulent business practices. The charges carried a maximum sentence of 5 years. The detective asked if I would be willing to testify if the case went to trial. I said yes. The case did not go to trial. Heather accepted a plea deal. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, ordered to repay the full amount of the fraud, and banned from serving on any HOA board in Minnesota for 10 years. The association sent out a notice the following week. It included a summary of the case, the restitution terms, and a reminder that all homeowners have the right to request records and challenge enforcement actions. Luis called me the day the notice went out. He said Heather had moved out of the neighborhood. Someone bought her townhome at a foreclosure auction. Good, I said. The neighborhood felt different after that. People started showing up to board meetings. The new board sent out monthly updates and held open forums. The compliance process became transparent, and violations were issued only after a proper inspection with photographic evidence and a written report. I kept the binder. I updated it with the audit report, the criminal charges, and the restitution agreement. I labeled it Case Closed and put it on the shelf in my office. One afternoon, about 6 months after Heather left, I was walking to my car when I saw a tow truck pull into the visitor lot. My stomach dropped. Then I saw the driver get out and walk to the management office. He was there to pick up an abandoned vehicle, not to enforce a fake rule. I relaxed. The system was working. Luis walked over a minute later. He had a folder under his arm. "I wanted to show you something," he said. He handed me a document. It was a written records production schedule that Karen cannot interfere with. The board had formalized the process, and every records request was now tracked in a public log with response deadlines and approval signatures. "This is perfect," I said. "You made it happen," Luis said. A few weeks later, I was checking my email when I saw a message from the new board treasurer. The subject line was Budget Transparency Initiative. The email included a link to a new portal where homeowners could view the association budget, vendor contracts, and payment logs in real time. Every transaction was documented with a date, amount, and description. I clicked through the portal. The towing line item now showed payments only to Metro Tow and Secure, the vendor listed in the original budget. Rapid response towing was gone. The compliance consulting line item had been eliminated entirely. I logged out and closed the laptop. Then I walked into the living room where my brother was watching a movie. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything is fine," I said. And it was. The final piece of the story came a year later. I got a call from Mike, the lawyer. He said Heather had defaulted on her restitution payments, and the association had filed a civil judgment. The court ordered her to pay the full balance plus interest and attorney fees. Mike said the association would probably collect through wage garnishment. I thanked Mike and hung up. Then I opened the binder one last time and added the judgment order. I wrote a note on the inside cover. Karen's staged photos got used against her. The HOA drops the case to avoid a public records mess. I smiled. Karen insists it is an easement issue and the recorded plat disproves it. That was the funny karma beat, the moment when her own rules and fake documentation came back to destroy her defense. I closed the binder and put it back on the shelf. I never had to use it again. The neighborhood stayed calm. The new board kept the reforms in place. People trusted the system again. Luis stopped by one evening with a bottle of wine. We sat on my porch and talked about the whole mess. "You know what the best part was?" Luis said. "What?" I asked. "Watching her face when you opened that binder at the first meeting," Luis said. "She knew she was done the second she saw it." I laughed. "That was a good moment," I said. "You stayed calm the whole time," Luis said. "That is what made it work." "I had to," I said. "If I lost my temper, she would have used it against me. The only way to win was to let her keep talking until she buried herself." "And she did," Luis said. We finished the wine and watched the sun set over the Sequoia Terrace Association sign at the entrance to the neighborhood. The sign looked different now. It was not a threat anymore. It was just a sign. A few months after that, I got a letter from the Minnesota Attorney General's office. It was a form letter thanking me for my role in exposing HOA fraud and abuse. The letter said my case had been used as a reference example in a statewide initiative to strengthen HOA oversight and homeowner protections. I framed the letter and hung it in my office next to the binder. My brother asked me once if I regretted pushing back so hard. No, I said. If I had not pushed back, she would still be doing it. Someone had to stop her. That is true, he said. But it cost you a lot of time. It was worth it, I said. And it was. The Sequoia Terrace Association is still running today. The board is stable. The budget is transparent. The compliance process is fair. People are not afraid to request records or challenge decisions. The neighborhood is a better place because someone decided to fight back with receipts instead of anger. I still drive past Heather's old townhome sometimes. The new owner is a young couple with a dog. They wave when they see me. The mailbox is painted the right color, and there are no violation notices taped to the door. That is how it should be. I keep the binder on the shelf as a reminder. Not a reminder to stay angry, but a reminder to stay prepared. Because the next time someone tries to abuse their authority, I will have the receipts ready, and I will know exactly what to do. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.